Thanks for joining us for our virtual third Saturday reception for Wild Dreams of a New Beginning. The show is up until April 10th. If you haven't had a chance to stop by and see the show, I highly recommend it. The current shows that we have up now are actually a collection of shows. Wild Dreams of a New Beginning, which was an invitational, including the artists that you'll get to meet today. Mark Bauer, Dave Yoas, Amy Nelder, and a couple of other invitees. We have a solo show for Jim Abwan in the Education Gallery, a solo show for Brandon Gastinell in the West Park Workshop, and selections from an open call that we hosted over a year ago. And this show was the first exhibition that we had to cancel due to 2020 and reschedule. We are open to the public, no appointments required. If you would like to have a private appointment, please reach out to us and let us know. If you can't quite make it in person, I encourage you to check out the virtual tour on our website, and you can browse all of the works in our online shop. You can also subscribe to our website to stay in the loop on upcoming opportunities and the exhibitions that we have coming up. And speaking of news, our next show after Wild Dreams will be The Collection, which is a world record setting collection of match cover art. So it's very tiny, 20th century pop art covers, and from a local collector, Lauren Moore, which will be really fun historical thing to see. And we also have solo shows for last year's Lottery for the Arts juried prize winners, Zara Amar, Joe Strickland, and John DeSalvo. And if you're interested in coming to our upcoming fundraiser event, Lottery for the Arts, you can find more information about that on our website. It's a really great art auction and lottery. Currently, our call to artists is still open. So if you're interested in submitting work in order to help us raise funds for our art education programs, the deadline is March 28th. And if you have any questions about that at the end of the show, please let me know. I'd be happy to answer them. The first artist that we were going to have present today, Brandon Gastinell, is actually in LA promoting some of his new work that was selected for the cover poster for an upcoming movie, Blind Spotting. So I'm just going to skip through. Couldn't make it today, unfortunately, but I really encourage you to come out and see Brandon's show. He's a young Sacramento artist working in pop-surrealism, and we were just really excited to be his first solo show and have him in the gallery. And I think his work is really, an up-and-coming thing to see in this region. So our first artist that we'll be presenting today is M. Mark Bauer. Oh, okay. Let me unmute you. All right, so Mark, if you can, oh, there you go. Right.
Okay.
So.
Am I on? Okay. I'm Mark Bauer, and I want to thank Brooke and the Blue Line for including me and selecting me for this show. This is actually the 5th time that I've been in the Blue Line over the last, 4 years or so. Like many artists, I was interested in art even from elementary school, and really is what I did best in school, and was always got a lot of gratification from doing art. And even when I went into high school, I was able to spend 2 hours a day. I got out of study hall, which they used to have in high schools. I don't know if they still do now, and spend 2 hours in the art room, pretty much unsupervised, and could do whatever I wanted to. And I experimented and just was kind of self-taught, whatever I did learn there. And then I went on to college at San Diego State, which was good for me. It was a real mix of younger professor artists and traditionalists. So I got kind of exposed to both worlds. And we actually had Andy Warhol come for a week to San Diego State. And there were some other progressive artists like John Baldessari was there for a while also, and he graduated from San Diego State. He was before me, but it was a good mix. And I was able to do a lot of independent study, almost like I was a graduate student. And I did get accepted to UC Davis, and luckily got to go there in 1969. But and started, and about halfway through, I got drafted into the Army during the Vietnam War. So my graduate experience was somewhat limited because of it being basically split in half. And when I got out of the Army, it took me a while to get over that. And but it was a great experience, and the artists, that were there, of course, everyone knows them as some of the most famous artists from the Bay Area. But they really kind of instilled a rebellious kind of, because they felt most of them felt like they were on the outside of the New York fine art world, and they had kind of the rebellious and nature to them, and I think they really helped to instill kind of to find yourself. One of the things that they first did when new graduate students, at least there's only about 10 new graduate students each year at that time, and the first meeting we had with them, they took us down to the basement of the art building, and they had a big stump of wood there and an axe, and they put art form magazines on top of them and chopped them up with an axe. That kind of just introduces to the graduate program. Anyway, I graduated from, in 1972, I got my MFA, and for a year or so, I went ahead and was able to teach at a junior college night school, and worked in construction during the day, and practiced some art. And eventually I ended up getting my own construction company, and for the next, until 2008, I was really just wasn't able to practice art. I was just too busy with supporting family and myself. And this painting that's up right now is one that was in my MFA show in 1972. And as you can see, it relates quite a bit to the work that I'm currently doing. I think that it might have been a reaction to the minimalist school of art that was so prevalent in when I was in graduate school, that I just wanted to maximize things rather than minimalize them. And I've always kind of liked the idea of the painting is just a part of the larger world. And I like the saturation of images, and I guess it leads to colors too. If you want to go on to the next image, this is one that was just after graduate school too. And again, it's kind of a crazy, mad world. I think I was upset with the world at that time also. And especially after getting out of the Army. So I don't know if it's changed much since then either. Go ahead with the next image. It's just another painting from that period of time. My work has always kind of been involved in it seems like mankind is on a path of self-destruction, and we have this privileged intellect, but it seems like I have hope that we can use it to save ourselves yet, but we also seem to be good at kind of self-destructing at the same time. I also started doing these black and white, heavily saturated images, and just to challenge myself too, of just using black on white. These are like large drawings or paintings. They're acrylic, but done with acrylic markers. and really basically no shading. They're done with just patterns and line widths and values. You go ahead to the next one. And then this is a shot of my current studio here in West Berkeley. I'm very lucky to have this. It's right next to the railroad, and I did have a shared space on the other side that workshops were done in, but that ended with the COVID-19 epidemic. She had to leave, and so now I have the full space, which is I would like to have somebody back to share the space with. Go ahead with the next images. These are now we're starting the images that I had in the show. And this one's Venus's half-life. And again, my titles come from just current events or memories or concerns. And they may or may not directly relate to the paintings. I try not to be, I really don't have direct messages about the paintings that are easily deciphered. This one, the Venus's half-life, it's really, there's an image of the Venus of Willendorf is half there with kind of this blue kind of bubbly image. And it kind of reminds me of the, when we talk about nuclear waste and half-life of nuclear waste and how that's a problem with our environment. And anyway, that's kind of where the title came from in some of the images. And then there's a lot of other images in it also. You can go ahead, keep going to the next one. This one's Thumb a Duck. And again, this is kind of a silly thing. Why can't a duck have a thumb? But also, you know, thumb is something that's related to higher development in species. And we have thumbs, and some of our cousins that are apes and gorillas have them also. But they, you know, what are we doing with our world, with our privileged intellect and abilities? But anyway, that's a takeoff on that and a whole bunch of other things. And I have kind of I like the idea of an artist being kind of a court jester, and that's kind of a self-image down there with a palette for an ear, and I'm riding in on a horse to save the world, I guess. But anyway, you can go ahead with the next image. This one is South of Eden, and it's kind of a takeoff on all the classical Adam and Eve paintings. But, you know, Eden has been kind of decimated in this painting, I think, and the clouds are kind of not normal. And anyway, it's just kind of a reaction to the environmental destruction and what we're losing. And, you know, Adam has a glove on because either he's toxic or she is, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. Something's going on. You can go to the next one. This one is Pika's field trip. And I don't know if you know what pike is, but a pike is one of the mammals that lives highest elevations, like in the Sierras, and they need a very cool climate to survive. And as we have our global warming going on, they're losing their environment. And he's taking a field trip down to the world, to our world, and seeing why is his world disappearing, and we're just a lot of crazy things going on. And that's kind of the theme for this painting. You can go ahead, next one. This one's called Joyride, and it's basically there's this kind of stone image sitting on a large high heel, and there's high heels quite often in my paintings, and it's just like the idea that women have to wear high heels to be, I don't know, to be attractive or necessary. And even when we saw women wearing high heels, like Mrs. Biden walking around in high heels, and I'm sure she never wears them hardly because it looked like she was having a hard time wearing them. But it's just the idea that of having to have to wear high heels and what it is, how it affects women. And again, there's kind of this gesture artist on the riding in the back with a palette for an ear and a limp paintbrush, which I feel like I have sometimes. Go ahead to the next image. This one's Bee Lever. It's kind of a takeoff on, it got the idea of when the bees were dying, and you know, they're kind of like the canary in the minds that something's going wrong with our world. And anyway, that was, I don't know if there's a bee in the painting, but and also that when the idea that people have, if they believe something, they feel they're right no matter what. And we've had a lot of that going in our political situation right now. Go ahead to the last one, I think. This one is disorderly content, and it kind of is a takeoff on disorderly conduct, that I was in the army and you get kicked out if you're, which would have been a good idea. But anyway, I like the idea. This one is probably between being a lot of almost abstract and images that are maybe recognizable. And there's really like not a lot of organization to it maybe, which I kind of like. But that was the idea for this one. Thank you. I think I'm done.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, thank you for sharing, you know, your works with us. And those are all of the works that are in the show. If you haven't seen it, it's really incredible in person to just be up close and get that detail that you can't quite get from a screen, and just kind of see all this amazing nonsensical designs and just crazy detailed patterns. So if you haven't had a chance to visit in person, I highly encourage it. Got a comment from Lynn McAuliffe. I'm so sorry for butchering your name, but Lynn says, I love Mark's work. Thanks for joining us, Lynn.
Well, thank you.
All right. So I'm not seeing any other questions popping up in the chat for Mark right at this moment, but if you have questions that you think of later, please hold on to them, and we will also, you know, address any unanswered questions at the end of the panel. So with that, thank you so much, Mark, for sharing your a little bit about your work and process with us. And our next artist that we're going to introduce today is Dave Yoas.
Hi, everyone. You've got a great image of me with my mask on, and that's in front of my piece called So Shoot Me. It's, first of all, I'll give you a little bit of my background, and then maybe we can talk about So Shoot Me. My background is I grew up in Northern California in the suburb of El Sobrante. That means the leftovers. That's kind of ironic because what I really work with primarily is leftovers. The only art that I ever really saw was on chalk smeared sidewalks. I wasn't around artists. I liked to draw in school, but that wasn't something that seemed like it was okay for me to do at that point in my life. And eventually I ended up going to UC Santa Cruz. I graduated with a degree in sociology, took a few art classes, but once again, I was just mostly focused towards society and their problems. I too, I am a contemporary of Mark Bauer. I grew up during the Vietnam War era and was profoundly affected by everything that was going on. And I think that it shows in my art. Eventually, I got out of college. I saved $2,000 and made it 3/4 way around the world and back, traveling to the Far East and Europe. And I eventually settled in the Netherlands, where I stayed there for about 3.5 years. And I was exposed to a family of artists, 2 of which were doing art full-time and 2 others who were doing it part-time. But because of my limited Dutch language skills at that point, I watched the artists, and I had to go to the airport and load and unload airplanes. I had to make a living. and was pretty exhausted by the end of it. I was a guest worker, and physical work was really all that was available to me at that point in my life. Eventually, I decided to return to Northern California, where I started working as a park ranger, and I became a park supervisor and eventually a park manager. And I retired from that position. And I love the work, but I was really getting my work done through others. So eventually I thought, I need to have something that I can control from start to finish. Directing work really wasn't anything that totally fulfilled me. So I started going to the local junior college and doing some low fire ceramics. And I was still working for the park district, and lo and behold, they sent me to classes in, of all places, Santa Fe. Well, gee, hurt me, beat me, make me go to Santa Fe. I mean, I was able to look at all kinds of tin art, and for some reason I was drawn to it. I saw work from the 1840s to the present day. I saw candelabras, nichos, all sorts of hand stamped tin, lamps, beautiful stuff. And I was also exposed to what I call upcycled tin art. I saw artists working in that venue, and I thought, frankly, I was getting a little tired of things breaking. When you're dealing with low fire ceramics, this stuff's pretty fragile. And I thought, I'm going to try tin art. And that was over 25 years ago. And once I started, I didn't stop. I mean, that's really where I caught my passion. I'm largely self-taught, and my inspiration can come from just about anything, either my past or a phrase, just about anything. I collect tin, as you can see from the picture that Brooke has up there. That is my studio. So I collect tin, I reassemble the images that I found or created, and that's how I create my art. I'm constantly asked, where do I find all my resources? I'm literally standing, the picture you see, I'm standing in the middle of my paint box. That's where I get my materials. I draw from there. I have industrial shelves filled with tin that's sorted by colors and all different kinds of subject matter. I pick up the tin from flea markets, sometimes eBay. I tend to use reproductions of old images, signs. I will collect toys that are damaged. You type in tin toy parts and you'd be surprised what will come up. I also, as a byproduct, being a collector, I also collect tins. And I think most people who do tin art end up with what we call no cuts, because some of the stuff is just so precious and beautiful in and of itself. You just can't bring yourself to cut it. But I find, generally, if I find something that's no cut, I can also probably find the exact same thing that's halfway rusted out or damaged, and I can get my hands on it, and I can still use the same images. Brooke, if you'd put We Start 'Em Young up. This one is just what it says. It's We Start 'Em Young. I started thinking, you see when I was young, we all, not all, but many of us, we would play war, play cowboys and Indians. And this piece is sort of riffs on that, because we do start them young. We're all a bit inured to, I think, sometimes guns. If you go to my website, daveyost.com, there are also close-up shots. And on those pistols, there are people writing on the hammers. As far as the figures in the center, there's also one of those is a small girl, because I wanted everybody to be included in this. I wanted there also to be a certain ambivalence. I wanted people to look at it and decide, well, what is this? Is it pro-gun? Is it anti-gun? That's really for the viewer to decide. But if you look a little closer, and I like to really have, I like the colors to hook you in, and then you look at it a little bit closer and you're going to find hopefully something that affects you. But one of the things I did in this piece is there aren't any triggers on any of the guns. So if you look a little closer, you might find out my bias. I like the idea of creating ambivalence. I like the idea of people being forced to look a little bit deeper, even if initially all they were attracted to was a bit of nostalgia or the colors. Could you go to fake choice next? This is a fairly large piece. This was brought on by the politics of today, but it probably could have been the politics of yesterday too. I'm going to read you a small statement because I think it explains the piece fairly well. Fake choice refers to the different fragments of self that make up our personas. The stereotypes on both sides of the piece are presented to us daily. We tend to see and judge ourselves by internalizing these stereotypes. Those choices are not that simple or even necessary. We are complex individuals, and feeling that we are only on one side or the other denies that complexity. The bifurcated fragments of self presented in this piece truly are a fake choice. Now, both of the statues of liberties in this piece can spin. I wanted to sort of have on one side have the softer colors and some of the softer issues, family, friendship, mom's cookies, sort of the suburban bicycles. And on the other side, the harder colors. Statue of Liberty has a gun. You see political fights, alcoholism, tobacco, prison, burlesque. There's even one in there that has to do with pesticides. The truth is that the Trump administration really was trying to have us see things as either black or white. It seemed like it was trying to drive us apart in a lot of ways, and I don't think we're that simple. I just don't. I think that we all have these great parts of ourselves, and we also have these sometimes sort of darker elements. And that's what this was all about. This was me pointing out the fact that it really is a fake choice, and one that I certainly don't aspire to. I try to recognize all different parts of myself and all different parts of society. And I don't think that making a simple choice is always all that easy. So the last piece, if you would, put up, it's called Because I Can. Previous to this piece, I actually had done a piece that was called Anti-Social Distancing. It was a piece that really talked about this last year. And after I did that piece, I was pretty burned out on just thinking about all the different stuff that this pandemic has brought up. And I wanted to do something fun. So what I did was I thought, well, I thought I want to do a piece with can-can dancers. Don't ask me why. I don't have to have a reason, because I can. It's sort of it's a joke on, that I work with cans and I work with tin. This particular piece is, I try to make it whimsical and fun. There are parts of it that actually fluoresce. So if the light hits it right, the windmill does spin and the different dots on it will light up. I like this piece. It also has little rats in the corner eating French fries. Well, you're not going to get French fries in France, but I just thought it was hilarious. So I had to add that to it. Inside one of the other kiosks is Toulouse-Lautrec. You know, so there's lots of things to discover on this piece. One of the things I really try to do with my pieces, once again, is to draw you in, have you spend a little more time with it, and find something here and there that engages you. I've had my work, I've had people say to me, Dave, you know, your work it's really whimsical, but somehow it's disturbing. And I like that. I'm comfortable with disturbing because frankly, most of the time I'm pretty disturbed myself. I don't like to consider myself to be well adjusted to a society that has some of the priorities that ours does sometimes, or even the world. And so being whimsical and disturbing is just fine by me. And I really hope that people who see my work, go to my website, take a look at, there's 30, 40 pieces there. And if you find something that engages you or disturbs you, I'll be happy. That would make my day. So thank you so much. And I really also want to thank everybody at Blue Line Arts. This has been a great experience. I've never seen my work so wonderfully displayed. And I feel like I'm in great company with the other artists. I think the whole show really holds together. And if you haven't gotten there yet, you need to take the virtual tour. It could be a little wonky. You know, I had a friend of mine say she spent more time on the ceiling and on the floor than she ever has in a gallery. But once you start to move yourself around through it, you will definitely figure out how to do it. And there's some great works to see. Thank you so much.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, Dave. And funny fact about some of Dave's work is, you know, if you see it in person, you realize that the tactile nature of tin and all of, you know, how like the two-dimensional pieces, how sharp they can be. And Dave was actually just sharing with me that like one of the hazards of working in that medium is, you know, like I am sure your hands get kind of chewed up by working with the metal tin pieces a lot. So that was a kind of a fun fact about his process. Does anybody in the chat have any questions for Dave?
Well, if they don't, I do have an addition to say something about what Brooke said. One of the things I do realize that if ever my work is found in the future, if it hasn't all rusted away, and somebody wants to authenticate it, all they have to use is a black light, and they'll find the blood that's left there, and they can type it, and they'll find out. All tin artists leave a little bit of their DNA evidence on their work. So if in the future you're around and I'm not, you want to authenticate a work, that's the way to do it. Bring out the black light.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you again so much. And it's my pleasure to introduce our last artist for the reception today, Miss Amy Nelder.
Hello. Hey, thank you so much, Brooke and Blue Line Arts. This is such an awesome show to be in, and I love seeing my work in such just really terrific, vibrant, and meticulous company. And Dave and Mark, it's been awesome getting to know you, and I'm fascinated to learn about your processes. And that last little bit about the DNA is so awesome. Everybody's all about the Bitcoin authentication and all that. Now there's nothing more factual than DNA. So maybe we should all just bleed a little bit onto our work. It's always thinking. Brooke, I guess I'll start with I realized recently that an ongoing theme in my work for the last 12 years has been my daughter, my family in general, but especially my daughter. So this piece is called Your Kitchen or Mine. I have two types of work in this exhibition. For those of you who've seen it and those of you who haven't, I am primarily a pop still life artist. And then I also have a partner series that I paint with my daughter called That's Not My Name, which we'll be getting to. So for the first 13 or 14 years of my career, I had a very different kind of work that I did. I called it Mythic Realism. It's large scale street scenes with little people running around doing funny things, highly, highly meticulous work. And when I was pregnant with my daughter, Chloe, about 12 and a half years ago, about halfway into my pregnancy, I was working on a large scale commission for a client in New York. And for some reason, I had a flash of a trompe l'oeil still life. It was a little canvas, and it was going to be a crate with a cupcake and a Diet Coke, and it was going to be called Kidding Myself. And I had previously had no interest in still life whatsoever, except when I saw what I liked occasionally. And I couldn't get it out of my head for a couple of weeks. I had to put it on a Post-it so that I could try to get rid of it. And then when I finished the commission, I painted it. And it turned out that painting in trompe l'oeil, these domestic scenes of our home life, was a pregnancy craving. And when Chloe was born, I thought it would go away, and I just couldn't do my other work anymore. So it took me about a year till she was about a year old when I slowly realized that my whole chemistry had phased out my old work, and that what I did now was this. So I was painting scenes of our domestic life, the mess after staying up all night, the mess after a party, the mess of family, trying to just really learning to appreciate what was going on in front of me instead of, as a woman with a baby, I know that some women, everybody has a different experience, but you know, a lot of people start telling you that, oh, you're never going to go out again. Life is over. You and your husband should go to all the movies now because you'll never leave your home again. And I thought, wow, I really like being at home, and I really like watching movies on Netflix with my husband and just celebrating having wine and popcorn and leftovers. So I made a real strong determination to make sure that if we ate leftovers, it was on our wedding china. We were no longer saving the good wine for guests. Everything was about just appreciating us and our relationship. So for about 11 or 12 years, I was strictly painting these variations on themes of our domestic life. And then, Brooke, if you can go back just one to the bananas.
Sorry.
Oh, is that the next one? Or is apples and honey come right after? So here we go. So at the beginning of the pandemic, you know, previous to that, the scenes of our domestic life were about staying home on a Friday night. And then a couple weeks into quarantine, I found myself really shocked to realize I was kind of jokingly telling a cousin of mine, I'm sorry, I can't come to the phone. I'm lysoling my bananas. And I realized that I had these other domestic scenes going on, and there wasn't going to be any little romance with heels kicked off on the coffee table and all that for a little while. And I was a bit afraid to paint these new images that were compelling me, but I realized that I had to communicate them and find camaraderie and some agreement about the ludicrousness of what was happening. So the next bulk of a year, I started painting scenes like this and the apples and honey, which is about, Brooke, if you can go to the scenes like this is called Scarcity the King. I did a couple paintings this past year about the trauma of stressing over what to use for toilet paper when you ran out of toilet paper and couldn't get any on Instacart. So I've been pretty heavily indulgent in thinking about what we do in the house during COVID-19. And this past year has been a pandemic painting year for me. Eventually, I really started to feel the camaraderie of painting these pieces and having people see them and either agree with me or disagree with me of what was going on in their own lives. Brooke, if you can go back to sorry, the apples and honey. Apples and honey, for instance, is more about having holidays with family on Zoom. Apples and honey being one of the foods of celebration of Rosh Hashanah. So here we are passing through the year. We're still doing a lot of family occasions on Zoom. We're still washing our bananas. I don't put Lysol on the bananas, just to clarify. But a lot of these habits have become even more and more about a tender sense of camaraderie and trying to just say, gosh, someday this is going to be over, right? So let's just admit that it's happening. Simultaneously to all this, I'm just going to switch horses for a second and talk about my work with Chloe. So if you can go to the That's Not My Name series. So this is a piece called Vitruvian Woman. The second set of pieces that are in this show are partner works that I create with my 12-year-old daughter. We've been doing them for 4 years now. 4 or 5 years ago, when the Harvey Weinstein news was so prominent, it occurred to me that 8 years old was not too young to start talking to Chloe about what's okay and what's not okay, and bodily autonomy, psychic autonomy, what language people use for you. And one day, Chloe and I were in the studio together. And again, she was 8 years old. And I thought, gosh, what's an age appropriate way to start talking with her about her rights and empowerments? And I said to her, you know, honey, have you ever noticed that sometimes one person will call you honey or sweetie or want to give you a fist bump or do a high five, and you're totally fine with it. And then another person calls you honey or sweetie or wants you to do a fist bump or a high five, and you just don't like that person, or you just feel uncomfortable and you don't know why. And she said, of course, yes. And we talked about that because she was never a big high fiver or fist bumper. And we used to have people, just strangers, demand to interact with her. And if she stepped away, they would actually voice being angry that she wouldn't high five them or do whatever. People tend to think that children are supposed to be attentive to them no matter what, because everybody likes interacting with cute little babies. So we had a big conversation that day, and I said, you know what? You know what's really interesting? Even when you become a grown-up woman, did you know that there are people that'll actually get angry with you if you don't like them talking to you a certain way? You know, if a grown woman lets one person call them honey and doesn't like another person calling them honey, a big argument can ensue. So we had a big conversation about that, and we were painting together. And then I was feeling kind of confident about her reactions, and I started going off on how Wonder Woman is the only superhero who is almost naked walking around in a bathing suit, and how she's the most prominent female superhero. And then I backtracked and I realized, and I said, but of course, you know, if she wants to walk around in a bathing suit, that's her right to do so, and no one has the right to talk to her or touch her or be around her in a certain frame of mind and evince that without her permission. So I told her, you know, as you grow older, if anybody calls you honey, sweetie, baby, sugar, chick, anything like that, if you're okay with it, that's great. That's your right. But if anybody makes you uncomfortable, either out loud or silently, you can say to that person, that's not my name. And even if you do it silently, that might empower you so that you don't feel beholden to that person. So that day I was drawing Wonder Woman, and she and I started painting this Wonder Woman. And then I started writing, and we were drawing these things on the canvas that we were talking about. And it blossomed into this series that we do together called That's Not My Name. And Wonder Woman is the vanquishing hero of the chicks and the honeys and the babies and the sweeties. And we have a lot of fun together, not only with the theme, but just working on the abstract together, I think, is also just a really beautiful experience for our relationship, because we're just painting all over each other, walking in front of each other, going around, deciding what the colors are going to be from one side to the other. And then that process has led to Chloe really becoming a great young abstract expressionist as well, which I think is important because so many kids get taught that abstract is something called scribble scrabble. People are supposed to draw a cow and have it look like a cow. They're not supposed to just do a painting of red. So this has been a really beautiful series for both of us. And that work then became the through line of part of our home life as well. So slowly, my work with Chloe has made its way into my still lifes as well. So Brooke, if you go a couple more slides, the pieces like birth, fertility, and resurrection. If you go to the next one, fertility and resurrection #2. These, I have some other still lifes now that have the some fem power themes to them that have to do with objects, and my meditations on what chicks mean and what eggs mean. And the next slide shows where I am right now, which is the COVID-19 work in this past year has been a really great meditation for me. And again, with the camaraderie with the global community has made me feel psychically safer and more rooted, and just having the freedom to paint my thoughts and paint my pain about either being at home or the exhaustion from all the different things we have to do, from wearing masks to washing some of the produce or whatever it is. And it's been an honor the way the work has been received. Apples and Honey was exhibited at the De Young earlier this year. I had some of the work shown with an online show with Advancing Women Artists and the Medici Project and the Uffizi. And it's been a huge tool for communication for me. Right now, I am in the middle of a series that kind of combines all of these things. The series is called Build Your Own Eden, and it has a lot to do with the few times that I brought in flowers to our home during the first few months of COVID. I slowly realized how bringing flowers in is so iconic of everything that we bring into the house, because flowers so obviously transform a space, but during COVID, everything you bring into your house is so magnified, the way that it transforms. And I realized that we are all building our own Eden in our home when we bring things in. People have been taking the time and effort and finances that they normally use for travel and renovations. Contractors are doing great right now, and designers, because so many people are realizing that home is where your peace can be if you're fortunate enough to be able to be mindful. So I started realizing that as we build our own Eden physically, we can also build our own Eden emotionally and psychically. And lots of people have been able to take this time this past year and say to themselves, well, my Eden also has to do with standing up for Black Lives Matter, going out for a protest, doing something that is philosophical, that changes the way that I look at my space as well. So this is one of those paintings. Most of the Build Your Own Eden paintings are still lifes with flowers with an apple that's had a bite taken out of it, representing the nexus of Eden and that transformative moment. And this, of course, is an example that just brings together my work with my daughter and my pop trompe-l'oeil still lifes. And the lollipop is the colors of most of our abstracts have a primary color rainbow theme to them when Chloe and I work on them together. So this is where I am now. And again, I think to myself that the through line, no matter what I do in my own work, is family and my relationship with my daughter.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us, Amy. I think it's a really beautiful story, and it helped me too as well to see like the through line from your earlier works to your projects with your daughter and how that affects some of the trompe-l'oeil. So thank you so much for
thank you.
So I want to open up the Q&A. Is there anybody in the chat who has any questions specifically for Amy about her work? Okay, I'm not seeing a lot of activity in here, so I'm just going to go ahead and move on to a general Q&A session. Everybody, if you'd like to, unmute yourself, we can have just a general chat. I had a question earlier in the chat from Sasha Alexandra Yakovleva, who's one of our artists that shows in the gallery and also a volunteer with us. And she had a question for Mark. What do you listen to when you paint? Music, podcast, or just nothing?
I mostly listen to nothing. I easily get distracted. If I do listen to something, maybe sometimes Terry Gross, you know, or if there's something dramatic going on, like an impeachment, I like to listen to that, even though I know where it's going.
Sorry about
I
that.
like the dynamics between the different parties, but it just kind of helps to reinforce some of the things that I'm anxious about. But anyway, so I can't really say where my inspiration comes from. It's not from necessarily listening to music or, but it just, when I start, like all artists, we start, or writers or poets or musicians, you just start with something blank and I start building on it. For me, I work with graphite pencils just on canvas and start drawing. And I have done some large graphite drawings on canvas also, but then I erase more than I draw. Well, I guess I draw more than I erase, but I erase a lot. And then eventually I start painting, and it just keeps changing until it's finished. Anyway, thank you for the question.
And I was going to ask Amy, is there anything that you do to kind of like get in the zone in the studio? Like, is there a specific, you know, is it a music? Is it a routine? Any kind of meditation?
I am in the zone every minute of the day. I don't really have any warm up or cool down, and I'm ready. My main problem is that I'm rather a slow painter. So in periods when I look like I'm painting quite a bit, that's because I am not doing any of the other things that I'm supposed to be doing, and including sleep. But when I'm listening to something, it's mostly books on tape. It's mostly Agatha Christie. I have a set of probably a dozen Agatha Christie's that I don't know what the math is, but I'm coming up on my 25-year anniversary this August of the first show of my work as a professional painter. And I historically can't listen to music too well. I'm also a musician, and music makes me extremely emotional to the point of being distracted from whatever I'm doing if I'm trying to make another art. So in order to de-access that, I put on books on tape, which just put me in a work zone. So I have some Agatha Christie's I've probably listened to over and over again, maybe 30 times. And I still have no idea who did it when I turn it on at the first hour, because when you listen to books on tape, it just zones out even what you're listening to.
Makes sense. That's kind of funny. Agatha Christie novels, who would have thought? But do you have any kind of process or you know, music that inspires you in your work? I know you said some of it can be kind of disturbed, and I'm just saying, you know, it sounds like a lot of brass instruments. Like when you look at some of your work, you know, it seems very loud and punchy. Is that what you listen to, or is it more peaceful studio environment?
Are you asking me, Brooke?
Yes.
Yeah, I listen to I listen to jazz. It's just sort of, and it's really a background because of my process. I'm collecting. Once I have a project, I may have 3 or 4 projects in the works, and I put all this tin in boxes. Then I start to pull stuff out. I start to process it. Sometimes I start cutting early. And for me, I have a very large table, and it's just composition. And I just go into the zone and lose time. So long as I'm losing time, I know I'm doing something right. If all of a sudden I look up, and so, you know, it doesn't really matter what's on in the background, so long as it's not too intrusive. So, you know, so long as I play it fairly softly, just so that I can get in the zone, because that's the best feeling. The best feeling ever is just to lose time. I love it.
I agree, Dave. It has to be something where you lose time and you're able to maintain your intrigue with what you're doing, right?
Yep.
Instead of the thing that's keeping you company.
So
Yeah, no.
a question in the chat from Kevin Wiseman for Dave. Do you typically sketch out your ideas first before you start assembling?
I have a general idea. I've gone so far as at times, because I have to construct things in 3D, where I'll actually make them in cardboard first, because tin it doesn't forgive you. You don't get to paint over. You don't get a do-over. You know, once you've cut it, you're sort of committed. So if I'm doing something in 3D, I deal with the whole construction aspect of it. And sometimes I will, whenever I'm doing it that way, of course, I'm having to sketch it out, because I have to figure out how everything's going to fit together. I have layers in my construction. So oddly enough, I will put myself to sleep at night thinking about how something has to be put together. It's a bit, you know, it's like what goes first, what goes second. And then slowly but surely I get in that dream zone. And sometimes some pretty fun things happen. So it's not always a lot of sketching, but it's more an idea, and then what images I can either bring to a piece, because sometimes I do paint them and construct them myself, or repaint something, or what do I have that really works? I presently have a piece that's has to do with vice. And so I have had to collect, okay, so which vices do I want to represent? You know, so I'll have a box of prostitution vice. I'll have a box of drug abuse vice. I'll have a box of, you know, gambling vice. And then of course I have a box of police too, because vice tends to be very corrupting. And then a box of different types of tin money. And it's all of, it works that way. And the other thing is that I really enjoy going shopping, what I call going shopping in my stash, because I discover images that I'd forgotten about, or I discover tins that I'd forgotten about. And it's really fun to have that sort of discovery. That's the collector in me that really gets to get off on playing in my paint box. But I don't get a lot of do-overs.
Right, right. Well, thank you guys so much for your time today and for showing up virtually at Blue Line Arts. And I can't tell you enough how much I wish that this was in person and that we could have a third Saturday reception. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all in person in the gallery soon. For those of you joining us in the chat, we're coming up to the end of our hour here. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'm so glad you got the opportunity to meet these amazing artists and hear a little bit more about their work. If there's any other questions that you have about the show that you didn't have a chance to ask, feel free to contact us at Blue Line Arts. We also have information about the artists that you can reach out. You know, if you're interested in reaching them out to them directly, let us know. I'll let them know and connect you. So with that, I'm going to say we are at the end of our third Saturday reception. Again, Dave, Mark, Amy, thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thank you too.
Thank you, Brooke.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Amy,
you.
It was nice meeting you, and Mark, it was nice seeing you again.
Nice seeing you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good.
Great talking with you guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have a great weekend.
Good luck in the future.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.